For me, the part where the user community was describing how their businesses are expanding, and it's north of 60% of the companies that were in the survey find their businesses expanding, and that translates with the majority of their business applications running on the mainframe platform to organic growth. And north of 60%, I think that's a fabulous indicator of why the platform stood the test of time, because the market continues to grow. Growth is a fabulous thing, and our customers can rely on the platform to deliver for that growth.
Yeah, my takeaway was similar. I think there were over 60% of the businesses get more than 50% of their revenue from mainframe applications. That's an amazing statistic, right? Despite all the hype of cloud and new computing technologies taking over the world, the mainframe is still running critical business in finance, insurance, government. It's undeniable, and the survey really drove that home for me. Yes, so hybrid is the way forward. So Joe and I, we always talk about getting the right workload on the right platform, and mainframe is the right platform for large, high availability, transactional workloads. Mainframe is the right platform for your database. 92% of the organizations use DB2 on Z. So it's clear for transactions and data, mainframe is the right place. Is mainframe the right platform for your systems of engagement, for web apps, for statistical analysis? Probably not. You should be looking at moving those to platforms where you don't need that real-time transactional capability, and you can run it out of band, perhaps a little bit less expensively. But for me, leveraging the right platform for the right job is what we see almost all of the businesses that are growing their use of the mainframe doing. Nobody wants a green screen UI. They're all going to web and mobile, and that's all going off platform. Charlie, what you have thoughts?
Yeah, I would add to that on the hybrid question. The dominant architecture for some time now has been hybrid. And in fact, I think the C-suite folks and the senior leaders in businesses and IT as well, their starting point, their lens is enterprise-wide infrastructure, platforms, technologies, data. And when they look at it from that perspective, then it's a question of how do you integrate that environment and get the most for what you were just describing. Okay, we have right workload, right platform, right technology. That applies to like the full perspective that these senior executives are looking at. So it's a question of how do you integrate, how do you deal with things like security when you have that broader lens, and protect data of the important data of your business, but the important data of your customers in a way that's trusted and protected, So there's so much to that wider lens, I think, that leads to why hybrid is really, it's
not just a platform that you run your applications on, but it's hybrid development environment, so you can develop similarly for mainframe as you do for other platforms, as you say. It's hybrid security, so the app end-to-end is secured. It's hybrid, database if you're storing some data on and off platform. So I think all of these things have to be considered, and again, I think the smart customers are realizing this and they're embracing it. AI. You can't go to a conference without hearing a ton about AI, and this conference has been no different, I guess. We're here at Share this week. And I would say my view on AI in mainframe is we're starting to leverage it for particular use cases. You mentioned operational use cases. So this traditionally, we've seen this used by many vendors and businesses for looking for anomalies, analyzing the mass amount of mainframe data that's emitted every day in SMF records and other types of mainframe exhaust, and analyzing these and applying predictive models to try to identify problems before they occur. And most shops are running something like this today with mixed results. Where we see the new generative AI technologies coming in, it's a perfect use case for trying to understand the vast amounts of COBOL code that businesses, organizations have, and they need to bring new talent in. They need to understand that code, and it can be very difficult. Generative AI can help a lot in generating documentation, help doing code explanation, even generating some simple code, we think, in the future. And on the operations side, typically organizations have run books and they have information that captures problems that they've had and how they've fixed them, but it's scattered all over and not very easily accessible, and it can be quite voluminous. We've seen generative AI and clients trying to deploy generative AI to help organize that information for them and give them like a chat window into their run book type of information.
And I'll add to those words of wisdom on AI. I definitely see it as a major shift in technology in a moment of time, but we're in early days.
Yes, definitely.
We're in early days, and I see AI having all this promise, but when you think about like our customers, large enterprise customers that are on mainframe infrastructure as a key part of their strategy, and knowing actually the historical perspective on mainframe, it's a very protected, reliable, resilient part of their equation, right? And they don't want, they're sort of risk averse there because it's the most important data, et cetera. So all this AI technology and the models get trained with data. So what's the provenance of the data? Are there biases in the data? Is it your data? So I think the enterprises have a lot to grapple with there and make sure they're doing the right thing by the data. Make sure they're doing the right thing by the data. So I think
absolutely, and it's not even you're talking about their actual application data that they gather in the course of operating their applications, but even data like their code or their documentation. What we've seen is organizations do not want this going out to a public cloud. So anything they're doing with AI has to be on-prem, and they have to know the provenance. They have to ensure that it's secure. So it's not it's a much more controlled environment for AI than sort of the wild west of ChatGPT, for instance.
The other thing too, on the early days around AI, I think there's a lot looking at automation of different things using that technology, and obviously within the guardrails of the things we were just talking about. But automation seems like the low-hanging fruit. And it's super important because if you can make your operation more automated, less prone to human error, and do things a lot more efficiently, of course that's going to have more short-term benefits, and that's where I think a lot of folks will start. But a lot of proof of concepts and various experiments, I would call them, in the space of AI, and it'll be great to be part of watching how that all unfolds.
Yes, and from a technology point, help enable our customers as they work with us on use cases. I know Joe would say, we are about bringing real business value, and that's customers don't look for technology just for technology's sake, at least most of them. They look for where do you get the real value out of it. So if we think that we can help a client bring value to what they're trying to accomplish with AI, we will. If to use your use cases, or your use case about automation, if we can just do an automation with straight rule-based automation or Ops MBS or something like that, we will do that. We won't harvest AI just because it's the cool buzz.
Right. Security. So what's really interesting about security, it goes back to something I said earlier. I think the way, like, as you move up into the senior executive ranks, they're looking at the enterprise-wide infrastructure when they're thinking security. And there's all these platforms and technologies that are integrated, hybrid, of course we talked about that as well, and the data that runs across that entire infrastructure is something that they have to protect and take care of and manage. So that's kind of the lens that they start with. Mainframe being just one of the elements of that larger infrastructure. And I like to think of it as, you know, there's lots of different nuts to crack. Mainframe is a tough nut to crack. But that said, George, you and I were just talking before we came in here about security and the complacency that comes with, oh, a mainframe is the most secure compute platform, bar none. True, but if you have complacency or you have lack of awareness from senior executives about what you actually have to do to secure the platform, use modern tools, do all the things that you need to do around business process and security processes. And of course, compliance is there and making sure you're staying compliant on all things, especially where business applications are concerned. So there's a lot for customers to figure out, but in a nutshell, on the nut metaphor, don't allow yourself to be complacent. Find out what the best practices are and apply them in your mainframe
That's
environment.
what jumped out to me when reading your survey. I could not believe it. There was something like over 40% of the organizations do not have multi-factor authentication set up for their mainframes. That's crazy. The mainframe has your most valuable assets on it. I have to do multi-factor authentication to log into my Netflix account, right? It's unbelievable, like that. They need to fix that immediately. And it shows sort of the level of complacency. While mainframe's always secure, it's always going to remain secure, we don't have to update to modern security practices. Absolutely false. Multi-factor, you need to be going to a least trusted or a zero trust model with the least level of authority at any time. You need, and there's a new set of tools that help mainframe users do that. Think about it for a minute. Let's say, Joe, you have access to a critical resource, or you need access to a critical resource. So you're granted access to that on your ID. And you work, what? I'll be generous, 12 hours a day, let's say. But you know, when Joe's sleeping, he doesn't need that elevated access, right? So if for those 12 hours that access were to immediately be taken away from him and decline from his ID, you're reducing the attack window by someone who might get into his ID by 50%. And that's just one easy step to take. You can tie these to very small windows related to a ticket that you open or something like that. And that can really improve your security posture and reduce your attack surface. And customers should be implementing something like this. So I'm very passionate about this particular point. Cleaning up IDs, people who have retired, many organizations have 10 years of people who've been retired for 10 years and they have IDs still on the system with access. That's an easy tool you can run to clean that up, and you should be doing that.
Healthcare, retail, government.
Finance.
Yeah. The biggest of all. Right?
It's the crown jewels of your business sit on the mainframe. That's good reason to heighten the attention of attackers.
I think that even looking, we talked there about security, but if we talk a little bit about modernization and transformation, you get sort of a bigger picture of some of these areas that we've been talking, the piece parts we've been talking about, because it really is on every single enterprise agenda is modernize, continuous modernization, how to modernize. And one thing that I think is important in that is the business strategy that you start with for any modernization project. Business strategy leads the way. And of course, at the other end of the spectrum, when you get through a modernization or a transformation, then it's results, measured results that actually deliver value to the business. And so for many that I interact with, sometimes you can sort of take that modernization thought down to the IT level. You have to start with that business strategy. Are you trying to be better with customers? Trying to drive efficiency and cost out? Are you trying to be agile to react to competitive environments? So there's always this continuous thing happening. The other thing to think about in this whole modernization topic is people and culture. And I was sharing with George, I hadn't seen it before, but if you know the author, Peter Drucker, famous author, he's attributed with a statement, or a quote rather, that reads, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And it really resonated with me from the perspective that, of course I'm a marketing person in my work life, so words matter and communications matter, and how can you convey something, and think about strategy going to execution, and then not having like the teams and the people get along or be able to transparently communicate and trust, that can collapse the best business strategy you might have conceived. And I think that is really the collapse part of that. Unfortunately, the data says that conservatively 2 to 3 of 4, of modernization projects fail. 2 to 3 of 4, more than 50% fail.
When you say strategy leads the way, it seems pretty obvious, but I've seen organizations where they'll get a new CIO in and they're not familiar with mainframe and they want to get rid of it, and they'll initiate a transformation project just to change technologies, and these can be super expensive, and oftentimes they get into them without really understanding the cost and what they're going to end up with on the other side. So although it seems obvious, it's not always done. So it's
right.
good to say it.
And early in that strategy perspective, did they have sight lines to the business value that they thought they would arrive to? And in that case, where you're doing just a technology replacement, you don't really have that sight line, you can end up with a failure. And of course, that unfortunately is often the case. Now, so our whole play in that way is to really be close in partnership with our customers and understand what they're trying to tackle. And then we then bring to bear not only our software, we bring to bear any kind of support, expertise, capability that
we really see ourselves as a partner, and we try to understand what pain they're experiencing to be that's the catalyst of them wanting to look at a move off the platform, and try to help them understand and weigh the benefits, the pros and cons.
Those modernization projects and that people and culture point, you have to have the highly skilled, capable teams in place to execute those focused business strategies into realized value. You have to have that in place. So succession planning and having different programs within your business and available to you externally. Of course, we support our customers in multiple ways with respect to, like, we had a customer actually this week at Share gave us a call and had somebody in their business move on unexpectedly, and they needed a particular skill set there. And so we were able to, we're bringing to them both our Vitality residents, which are new in their careers and learning about the technology. They're already in our program, so we can have them go out and see them. In fact, one of them from Share that I just got first chance to meet yesterday was with a customer today, the one who had that unexpected situation. So at that end of the spectrum, and then we also can bring to bear experts that have 20 plus years in a particular technology, and we bring those to our customers. But we are always talking to them about, you have to build that skilled workforce and the succession planning for an aging population of skills that are potentially moving on from your shop.
Yeah, we're talking about the yearbook survey today, and it was like every survey I see is surprising how mature, let's say, the mainframe workforce is almost over 70% had 20 years experience or more in the organizations you surveyed. 70% with 20 years experience or more, right? So that's a workforce that is going to be retiring, there's no doubt. And this is why skills, when we talk to our clients, comes up every time. That's their top issue. How do we attract and retain skills? And that retain goes to culture, right? If you bring them into a mainframe sweatshop, working on old green screen tools and programming COBOL with, on green screens with no modern DevOps processes or pipelines, they're not going to want to stay there very long, right? But that doesn't have to be the case. All these modern tools that they use in school to do cloud development can be brought to bear on mainframe. And you start building a culture of improving the mainframe and modernizing it, and that attracts those people. That's cool, fun work. It attracts them, it builds a culture of more people wanting to come and the people who are there wanting to stay. So it's really important that not just to modernize the applications so they run faster, but also so that you can attract and retain the talent. And it's not just the applications, it's the tools and the processes around that.
And for the Vitality residents that we get to know and work with every day, I find we're starting to turn the corner a little bit in terms of, like, they're so bright and full of energy and inspiration and want to learn their craft. And
that was my favorite part of the keynote. They brought a couple of the Vitality students up onto the stage, and it was incredible, the energy they had and the excitement around mainframe, and as it's so early in their career, that was just amazing to see.
And their progress, really, they're fast learners. And it's just I think there's a different feeling right now in the ecosystem that we're seeing around that progress.
Absolutely, and we see it as a CTO. We hire a lot of architects and engineers, and we see it internally. We are able to hire them and train them and provide them a fun culture and environment to work on, and we have a very low turnover rate. We post jobs, some jobs we get 700 applicants for on a mainframe job. So it's pretty, it can be done.
I would say it's not so much about an average, because what we're finding is there's folks that are young in their career, and maybe even, we had a Vitality resident sharing her story this week at Share. She had another family member that went into mainframe and had an exciting path, but she was a GM in a small business prior to even thinking about IT. But she had all the smarts and analytics and wanted to learn, and she's now full-fledged and productive, in a fairly short period of time on mainframe. So it could be mid-career and even later career. We find some of our folks that, for whatever reason, are trying to find a path that'll work for them, and they bring all the right kind of attitude and aptitude, And attitude and aptitude together is a powerful combination. So we see it at all different stages of life, on your life journey. It's not just like, 25-year-olds, that are interested in the platform. They're there too, but they're across the whole spectrum.
But it is interesting. There is a certain, I don't want to say characteristic or DNA in the people who like the problems that the mainframe presents, right? And we see it even when we recruit out of college. Some people are just not interested. They want to go, the newest, coolest, whatever it is. I want to be there, bleeding edge, startup type of guy, right? But there's that's not the personality of everyone, and it's not very difficult to find the type of personality that likes to work in a mainframe environment, especially if it's a fun and growing and exciting environment, which it can be. Operations specifically, I think this new workforce that's coming in is going to have to operate these critical systems for these businesses, and they just do not have the same level of experience and expertise that people have been doing it for 30, 40 years ago. So the tools that are used to operate these environments need to improve, and they are improving, right? We're going from green screen interfaces with raw data to integrated web interfaces that show data from many tools all at once. They currently do analytics over that data. We were talking about even some machine learning to predict when something might be going wrong or alert you when something might be going wrong. And increasingly, I think AI will be applied to these areas in time. But literally the transformation that has to happen is as these new, younger, what we call the less experienced sysprog comes in, they need to have the tools to support them for their level of expertise. And that doesn't mean that the tools that people are currently using will go away, but they'll be augmented and made easier to use in the operations space.
Some of the newer folks that I've been talking to this week too, they talk about problem solving as like one of the most interesting things that they have in this mainframe experience they're having when they're new to it, that they might not have in other areas that they've been in. And so problem solving, and then along with the question there for George on 5 years out, you have all this data in the modern platform that has to be part of understanding, like, how do you solve a problem? And so having the skills and capabilities to use data, we have open telemetry with respect to data on the platform, lots of different new tools coming into play there. And yeah, so they're talking about how they love to be a problem solver. Well, I'd say, understand the data dimension of that too, and how you can use data to inform. In addition to, of course, the bigger thought of, applying technologies like AI in the future.
And the hybrid world that exists now and will continue to expand, that offers a new set of challenges for operations, because when something's not working in your app on the phone or on the web, well, is that in the cloud piece, or is that in the back-end mainframe piece, or is it in DB2? And how do you trace what's going on end-to-end through that whole application, right? That can be difficult, but as Joe was mentioning, this open telemetry, which is really taken off in the mainframe space to give you end-to-end telemetry data from mobile to cloud to mainframe to back-end database, that's going to be really powerful in helping diagnose a problem from the end user perspective. COBOL gets a bad rap all the time in the press. I don't know if you can remember back when COVID broke out, and they had to, I think it was the state of New Jersey, needed to generate a whole bunch of stimulus checks. They had troubles, and they blamed it on COBOL.
There's a corollary story along the same lines, the one you just mentioned, with another government organization, not the one you referred to, Amanda, but another government organization that needed stimulus checks out, and they had a situation where it was a mandate from the top leader of that government organization. We need this done ASAP, and they went to their technology teams, and there was various, 2 months, 3 months scenarios coming back from them. And then the mainframe team stood up and said, well, we could do that in 2 weeks. And they were able to write some code, and not only write it, test it, deploy it, and they did it in 2 weeks and delivered it. And that was like, okay, where's the modern technology platform at and team at that can address a business challenge like that? It was a great story that happened, and it's kind of along the lines of what you described too in the state of New Jersey.
Yeah, I feel like it's not, like, if you know anything about technology, it's never about the language, right? It's always about, how was the application written to handle the set of circumstances that it's faced with now, right? And COBOL applications have, many of them are very robust. They've been running for a very long time, and they can be relatively agile if you have skilled people knowing how to modify them. It's so to answer your question, what's my take? My take is just another flare-up which will go down, and we'll go back to running all the world's transactions like we do now.
Well, I'll go back to people and culture, and the Drucker comment, which is culture will eat strategy's breakfast. And that's so true, right? If you don't have a good culture and good teams and transparency and trust, executing strategies just, could easily go awry. And don't underestimate that. Don't underestimate what the people do together and how they get along, and are you really able to keep them aligned on a vision and a strategy all the way to plan and execution. If you don't do that well, you'll potentially put it all at risk, even if you have the best strategy in the world.
Yeah, I love that answer. I'm going to go a slightly different way, which is understand, if you're a leader, an IT leader, and you have mainframe in your organization, in your shop, take the time to understand the value of it. Understand what it's doing for you, the value you're getting out of that, what it's good at and what it's not good at, right? And invest in modernizing around its strength, building an organization and a technology base that's modern and maintainable and gives you more agility and optimized to give you more affordability. Modernize in place, and when it doesn't make sense, then you should consider a move. If it's not a workload which is well suited, absolutely move that on to another platform where it's more well suited. But don't run from the mainframe or be afraid of the mainframe without understanding the value that it's actually bringing your organization, and the potential to modernize that asset.
The one thing to add would be around this topic that we've been on for much of the conversation, transformation and modernization in place, as you were describing, is really the idea of being very focused when you're developing that strategy and plan. I think the other area where some of the customers that I've had the opportunity to work with and see maybe not have the success that they wanted is they'll start too wide. Business strategy, we talked about it earlier, agility, cost and efficiency, a resilient workforce, security, all those things that you need to do better in your organization. Have your modernization projects be very focused so that you can really have the sight lines to the outcomes that you're going after. And so maybe that emphasis part of be more focused. Don't allow yourself to get so wide that it's almost unachievable what you're trying to do. You're trying to do too much. Really focus on the problem you want to solve.
Yeah, pick a place where you find you're going to get a reasonable or a large amount of value and focus in on it. Fix that, go to the next place.